hear me out. This verse is not about purgatory. Hi everyone, Patty here. I'm trying out XR animation for the first time. So sorry if there's a little bit of jank. It seems to be okay so far, but we'll see. I want to talk about 1 Corinthians 3:15 because people love quoting it as proof text for purgatory, but frankly, that is not what it says. And I think people are either missing the context from a few verses prior to 15, or they're just ignoring it. I don't know which. But anyway, let's go through that. I'll show you how it doesn't actually support purgatory. So going over to 1 Corinthians 3, basically you can start in verse 5 to get the context of this, but he pretty much explains it in verse 10. But if we go back to verse 10, Paul states, according to the grace of God given to me like a skilled master builder, I laid the foundation and someone else is building upon it. Let each one take care how he builds upon it. Now, Paul can't be talking about salvation here because only Jesus could lay the I'm sorry. Only Jesus could lay the foundation for salvation. And Paul even tells us that in the next verse. He literally says only Jesus could do that. So he can't be talking about the foundation for your salvation. And since purgatory is related to your salvation, it's supposedly the burning up of unrepentant sin, then he can't be talking about that. Now, what he is talking about, we can figure out through the task given to Paul. And if you go over to Romans 15 through 16, he'll tell you that he was tasked with ministering to the Gentiles. That's why Christ picked him. So when Paul talks about building a foundation, he's talking about the foundation of the ministry, not talking about salvation or purgatory or anything related to that. He's talking about building up the church to minister to the Gentiles. He laid the foundation, and other people who come along build upon it. Now, can't breathe, I'm sorry. If we go over to verse 12 through 14, he likens the works in the ministry to different materials. If anyone builds on the foundation with gold, silver, precious stones, wood, hay, straw. So we have different materials here. Some of these are valuable and some of these survive fire, which is very important here. We're going to get to that in a second. So going on, verse 13, it says, each one's work will be manifest, for the day will disclose it, because it will be revealed by fire, and the fire will test what sort of work, and that's important, what sort of work each one has done. So these are works. These materials are analogies or representations for works in the ministry. Okay? Make sense? Cool. So follow along with me here. Things like gold, silver, precious stones, wood, hay, all of those react to fire differently, right? Now, gold, silver, precious stone, wood, they'll last longer than hay. Wood will last longer than hay. Hay will be burnt up instantly. Precious stones, gold, silver, there's a certain temperature that the fire has to get to before they actually start to melt. Okay? So, if we're comparing works to materials, which can be burnt up, first of all, we know that the materials are not literal. Okay, he's talking about works. These are representative of works. It's not literally gold. We don't build up the ministry with literally gold or literally silver. Okay, these are works. Got it? Okay, so then it goes on to say the fire will test each work. Well, now if we know that these materials are representing works, then we know the fire isn't literal because the materials aren't literal. Does that make sense? So what is he saying here? He's saying that people will build up the ministry with different types of works, and some of those works are more valuable and can withstand the test of fire better than others. Does that make sense? Hay burns up instantly. Gold does not. Okay? So, when we get to the final verse, 3:15, it's talking about someone's works might be burnt up, but he himself might be saved. Okay, how do we reconcile this with salvation? Well, consider two people. and this is the best analogy I feel like I could come up with. Consider that there are two people. Both of them want to go into street preaching. Okay? Now, the one says, I'm going to get ready for street preaching by studying. I'm going to study the scriptures. I'm going to get myself ready so that I know what I'm talking about. So if someone comes up to me with questions, I have an answer. The other person says, no, I want to go out there and I want to preach now. I just feel like I can do it. I'm ready for it. I'm going to go out there. Okay? They both hit the road. Now, the one that's studying, he starts to preach. And someone comes up to him with questions. Let's say an atheist comes up and challenges what he's saying. There are contradictions in the Bible, or how do you reconcile this? Well, what did this mean? That sort of thing. Just questions for a scoffer, questions for an unbeliever, right? Now he's studied, so he has the answers. His works can withstand the test of fire. Does that make sense? So he can answer, he can survive. His works will survive that encounter. Okay? Now the other person, on the other hand, over here, as much as his intentions might be good, he didn't study. Okay? So someone comes along and starts to challenge him, starts to challenge what he's preaching about. He doesn't have answers. And that doesn't mean that he's wrong. It doesn't mean that he's not a believer, right? But he's not ready. His works aren't solid. His works are not made of material that can withstand fire, okay? The fire is a test. So when someone comes up and challenges him, he buckles. Now, why this is relevant to verse 15 is it says, even though he will suffer a loss, he himself can be saved. Well, that makes sense, because if it's talking about works, he can go out there and be ineffective in preaching, right? But as a Christian, he can still be saved, even if his works don't stand the test of fire. Okay? So this isn't about purgatory. This isn't about your unrepentant sins being burned off of you like people seem to think it's saying. No, this is about the test of the ministry, the works of the ministry being tested by fire and surviving. Okay? It even said, it'll be tested by fire. The fire is not literal. We figured that out. If the materials are in this case are not literal, then the fire can't be literal either. Okay? This is speaking about something. Speaking about works and the test of works. So, I hope that this is educational for you. I hope that this helps. But the conclusion is that this is not about purgatory. This is about the works of the ministry and whether they withstand the test of time and challenge and objections and stuff like that. Because when you have works that are strong, like you know your theology, you know your scripture, you've memorized verses, you can counter the most often said objections to the Bible or to Christianity, well, then your works are good. They'll withstand time. They'll withstand the test. They'll get through the fire. But even if you don't, even if your preaching kind of sucks, even if you don't really know or really have all the answers to someone's objections, guess what? As a Christian, you can still be saved. Even if your works don't stand the fire, you can still be saved. So that's what it's talking about. It's not purgatory. It's about the works in the ministry. Hope this helped.